So my name is Rhoda Garland. I'm the Acting Commissioner for the Rights of Persons with Disability in Malta, and I work at the Commission for the Rights of Persons with Disability. We are the regulator for the disability sector, and we act as the independent mechanism which monitors the implementation of the articles of the UNCRPD.
Could you talk about the DI and independent living process in your country?
So in Malta we have 3 areas that deal with disability. We have the Directorate for Disability Issues, which is responsible for implementing the national strategy. Then we have Agencia Support, who provide the services, and then I work for the Commission, where we monitor and regulate. So for deinstitutionalisation to work, there's been an understanding in Malta that what we need to do is ramp up the services to give disabled people and their parents the confidence that they will be supported if they do move out of institutions. Agencia Support have a huge number of services that they provide, including things like personal assistance, where you can have anything from 2 to 3 hours a week, or right up to a 24/7 live-in carer, which is subsidised by the state to enable disabled people to live independently and be able to make their own decisions and be more included in society. We also have various schemes for assisting people financially in order to get things like assistive equipment, for example hoists for bathrooms and wheelchair assessments, driving assessments. We also have a memorandum of understanding with the Housing Authority, so that some accessible apartments are provided from the Housing Authority stock, so that Agencia Support can actually begin to move disabled people out of institutions with the right level of support into apartments of their own. So we have quite a few systems in place, but obviously before we can close down the institutions, we need to be able to ramp these services up. So this is a process which we envisage planning for in the next 5 or 6 years and gradually winning people over to the idea. There are some issues relating to the culture in Malta which we need to work on. There is an assumption from the older people in Maltese society that if they have disabled children and they die, that they would need to move into an institution, and up until fairly recently we had them putting their disabled children onto the waiting list for institutions in case they were to die. We have stopped this now, so nobody is being added onto the lists for institutions, but we have to persuade parents that their children are not going to be abused, that they are going to be supported, and that they will be more independent. And in the time that they decide to put a child on a waiting list for an institution, if they divert their energies into providing training for the child and getting support from Agencia Support, then these children will learn how to live more independently and make their own decisions, and as a result there will be no need to have the institution. But this is obviously a cultural change, and this is something that will take a fairly long time to bring about. I don't think we're under any illusions that this is going to be something that we will bring about probably even in 10 years. I think this is a long time coming, and we need to persuade the government that they need to provide additional funding, that they need to be able to provide additional services, and that they need to divert the money that they are spending on institutions at some point and transfer it into providing more suitable services for disabled people to be able to live in the community and make their own decisions.
And what is your relationship with the government as an organization? Do you find that they are supportive, or what would you say about that?
So the Commission is independent from the government. We do fit underneath the Ministry for Inclusion, However, we operate independently, and that means that if we need to criticise the government or we need to take a complaint out against the Ministry for Education over the way, for example, that a disabled child is being treated in mainstream schools, then we are able to do that. We are given a budget to run our office each year, and we have the responsibility to allocate those funds in the best way that we see fit. We also provide a lot of feedback. We liaise with the disabled people's organisations and the NGOs within Malta and take their feedback on various issues and policies that are brought out. And obviously as CRPD, I have a place on a lot of government boards so that the voice of disabled people can be heard. So for example, I am sitting on the board of the Malta College of Arts and Science and Technology. I sit on the University Access Committee. I also have a place on our Jobs Plus agency, which deals with employment and social welfare services. And there has been a push from the government, suggested by us originally, that there should be disabled people on the boards of all government entities, because it's important that disabled people, their voices are heard. And with this in mind, we have also created a committee called Engage, and every piece of policy goes through the Engage committee, which is made up of parents and disabled people, and people from government entities, in order to make sure that their suggestions are taken on board before policies are submitted to the Cabinet for passing.
And what are your hopes for the future?
I think what I aim for in the future, because I am just about to start in the role of Commissioner, my hopes are that we will be able to reach out to more people, because there are people in Malta who perhaps don't know about the services that are available to them. So we have an awareness raising role. I think also that we have a huge amount of work to do in looking at government policy, and especially relating to deinstitutionalisation and the provision of support services for disabled people, because until they get those services, then their ability to be able to live independently is much reduced. I also think that there needs to be more attention made for people who have multiple impairments, who are often slightly left out of the services that can be provided because of the nature and the severity of their impairments. So we have, for example, a 2% quota for employing disabled people, and there is a contribution that has to be made to a support agency if a company does not employ 2% of its people as disabled people. And as a result, we have seen a vast improvement in the number of disabled people employed. However, the people who are still waiting to be employed tend to be those with either intellectual impairments or psychosocial issues or multiple impairments. And these are the people who we need to be able to think about, and we need to be able to provide better solutions for.
Thanks. Do you have something to add, something that you think is worth mentioning?
I think that the work that is going on at the moment for a move towards independent living and being able to make your own decisions is something that I, as somebody who has spina bifida, have been able to do all of my life. But I am aware that there are an awful lot of disabled people who don't have those opportunities. And I think that the ability to be able to live your own lives and make your own decisions is something that is a sort of fundamental human right. And as well as talking about disability rights, at some point we have to move towards the fact that these are human rights issues and that there are obligations that the state really need to take into consideration, and that applies to all states in European Union and actually across the world. This is not something that needs to be thought about. This is just something that needs to be done. The number of protests that disabled people will take part in is bound to grow if these needs are not met, because I think as disabled people are able to find their voice and understand their rights, then they will hopefully, quite rightly, take to the streets and other methods and actually fight to make sure that they're able to achieve these rights. I think that we will never have proper equality until states understand that they have a real responsibility to provide these services for disabled people.